The gavel slammed down like a thunderclap in the packed Seattle courtroom, sealing Nathaniel's invention as the lifeline that yanked his failing tech startup from the brink of bankruptcy. Millions saved in a single verdict, his name etched forever in the annals of Pacific Northwest innovation. But as the applause erupted around him, Elijah's hand slipped from his under the table, a ghost of warmth vanishing into the ether, leaving Nate's palm cold and his heart fracturing like the rain-lashed windows outside. "I thought we were unbreakable," Nate whispered to the empty space beside him, the words dissolving into the storm's howl, as the man who'd promised forever walked out the door without a backward glance. Nathaniel Hayes had always chased storms, not the literal kind that battered the Puget Sound with relentless fury, but the ones that brewed in boardrooms and late-night coding sessions, the tempests of deadlines and doubters that lesser men fled. At 32, he was the wunderkind engineer who'd turned a garage hack into Greenwave Tech, a company on the cusp of revolutionizing urban flood control with AI-driven barriers that could predict and divert rising waters before they swallowed cities whole. Seattle, with its perpetual drizzle and dramatic deluges, was the perfect petri dish for his obsession. Born and raised in the shadow of the Cascades, Nate had grown up tinkering with salvaged circuit boards in his father's old workshop, dreaming of machines that could outsmart nature's wrath. His mom, a no-nonsense librarian with a laugh like wind chimes, had called him her little inventor. His dad, a stoic mill worker who'd lost 2 fingers to a saw blade before Nate could walk, had just grunted approval over lukewarm beers on Sundays. But dreams had a way of curdling in the Hayes household. When Nate came out at 17, fumbling the words over a dinner of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, the silence that followed wasn't thunderous. It was suffocating, a vacuum that sucked the air from the room. His dad had pushed back from the table, chair scraping like nails on chalkboard, and muttered, "This ain't how we do things in this family." Mom had cried quietly into her napkin, whispering prayers Nate didn't believe in. No screams, no dissonant scenes straight out of a bad Lifetime movie. Just a slow erosion, visits dwindling to obligatory Christmas cards, birthdays marked by checks that arrived late and unsigned. The wound festered quietly, a scar tissue of unspoken rejection that Nate buried under layers of code and caffeine. By the time he met Elijah at a tech mixer in Belltown, rain pattering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of that overpriced loft space, Nate had armored himself in ambition. Elijah Voss was everything Nate wasn't. Effortlessly charismatic, with sun-kissed skin from summers in San Diego that he traded for Seattle's gloom, and eyes like polished amber that seemed to see straight through your firewalls. A marketing was at a rival firm. Eli slouched against the bar in a fitted blazer, nursing a craft IPA, his laugh cutting through the drone of venture capitalists like a lighthouse beam. "You're the flood guy, right?" he'd said, sliding onto the stool next to Nate, close enough that their knees brushed. "Heard your barriers could save the world one soggy basement at a time." Nate had snorted, heat creeping up his neck. "Or just keep the hipsters' artisanal coffee shops from floating away." It was the first genuine smile he'd cracked all night, and Elijah's grin in return felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. They talked until the bartender flipped the lights, about Nate's prototype that used satellite data and neural nets to deploy inflatable dams in real time, about Eli's failed attempt at screenwriting back in Cali, about how Seattle's gray skies made you crave color in unexpected places. By dawn, they were tangled in Nate's sheets in his Capitol Hill walk-up, the city humming below like a distant heartbeat. It wasn't fireworks or fate. It was easy, like slipping into a well-worn jacket. Eli stayed for breakfast, burnt toast and black coffee, and then for the weekend, and before Nate knew it, 6 months had blurred into 2 years of stolen weekends, whispered plans, and the kind of love that felt like coming home after a lifetime adrift. Greenwave was thriving by then. Nate's team of 5 misfits crammed into a warehouse space in Fremont, surrounded by whiteboards scrawled with algorithms and half-eaten pizza boxes. Eli had jumped ship from his old job to handle PR, turning Nate's dry demos into viral TEDx clips that drew investors like moths to a flame. "You're the brains," Eli would say, pressing a kiss to Nate's temple during late-night strategy sessions. "But I'm the silver tongue that seals the deal." It was a partnership in every sense. Professional, personal, profound. Nate's old wound? It ached less with Eli's hand in his, the world outside fading to a tolerable blur. Then came the patent war. Apex Dynamics, a Goliath out of Austin with deep pockets and deeper grudges, claimed Nate's core algorithm infringed on their proprietary flood modeling tech. It was bullshit. Nate had built it from scratch, line by line, during sleepless nights fueled by Red Bull and resentment. But lawsuits didn't care about truth. They cared about delays, depositions, and dollars draining like water through a sieve. Greenwave teetered. Investors pulled back, whispering about IP risks. Nate barely slept, his apartment a war zone of legal briefs and lukewarm takeout. Eli was his anchor, brewing tea at midnight, murmuring, "We've got this, Nate. You built something unbreakable." The trial was a circus. Fluorescent-lit courtroom in downtown Seattle, rain sheeting the windows like nervous applause. Nate testified in a suit that pinched at the shoulders, his voice steady as he walked the judge through the code's evolution. How he'd modeled it on chaos theory, adapting to variables no one else saw. Eli sat in the gallery, thumbing through notes, his presence a silent vote of confidence. When the verdict dropped, full exoneration, patent upheld, Apex slapped with sanctions, the room exploded. Reporters surged forward, flashes popping like gunfire. Nate stood numb, the weight lifting off his chest like fog burning off the sound. He turned to Eli, expecting that amber-eyed triumph, the bare hug that would ground him. But Eli's seat was empty. Nate scanned the crowd, gone. His phone buzzed. A text, terse and final. "Meet me at the park. We need to talk." Pike Place Market buzzed with oblivious energy. Vendors hawking salmon, tourists snapping selfies under the neon public market sign. As Nate wove through the throng, heart hammering. The rain had picked up, a fine mist that clung to his lashes. They met by the waterfront railing, the Ferris wheel's lights smearing into colorful halos across Elliott Bay. Eli leaned against the iron, arms crossed, his face a mask Nate didn't recognize. "I can't do this," Eli said, voice barely audible over the gulls. "Not like this." Nate's stomach plummeted. "What? The trial's over. We won. Greenwave's saved. Not the company." Eli's eyes flicked away, toward the dark water churning below. "Us. Hiding. The glances we dodge at meetings, the roommates lie to your team. I thought I could handle it, Nate. For you, for this dream we're building. But seeing you up there today, owning your genius, it hit me. We're half a life. I want more. Rings, vows, the whole damn world knowing." The words landed like punches, each one stealing breath. Nate gripped the railing, knuckles whitening. "We talked about this. Seattle's progressive, but the investors, the board, they're old school. One whiff of distraction, and poof, funding gone. And my family." He trailed off, the old scar twisting. "They barely acknowledge I exist. What makes you think the world will roll out the red carpet?" Eli's laugh was bitter, stripped of its usual warmth. "Maybe because I'm tired of being your secret. Tired of loving a ghost." He pushed off the rail, shoulders hunched against the drizzle. "I need space, Nate, to figure out if I can keep doing this." "Space?" Nate echoed, the word foreign, toxic. "After everything? You were there every step." "I know." Eli's hand brushed Nate's arm, a fleeting anchor. "That's why it hurts." Then he was gone, melting into the market's crowd, leaving Nate adrift in the downpour, the victory bitter as bile on his tongue. The weeks that followed were a haze of forced normalcy. Greenwave surged. Press junkets, expansion talks. Nate's face on the cover of Wired as the Flood Whisperer. He smiled for cameras, shook hands with suits who called him visionary. But inside, the storm raged unchecked. Eli's apartment in Queen and sat dark most nights. Texts went unanswered, voicemails a void. Nate threw himself into work, tweaking algorithms until his eyes burned, but the code blurred with memories. Eli's head on his shoulder during ferry rides to Bainbridge, their first awkward dance at a Pride after-party. The way Eli's fingers traced Nate's spine like mapping constellations. One night, bleary from a 16-hour day, Nate cracked. He drove to Eli's building, the wipers slapping rhythmically against the windshield. The doorman buzzed him up, old habit, and Nate pounded on the door until it swung open. Eli stood there, hair disheveled, in a faded UCSDT, surprise etching his features. Nate! Don't! Nate shouldered past, the apartment smelling of takeout and regret. You don't get to ghost me. Not after 2 years. Tell me what's really going on. Eli closed the door softly, leaning against it. It's not that simple. My sister's getting married next month. Big Catholic affair in San Diego. Mom's already side-eyeing me about settling down. And work. Apex is circling back with feelers. Better pay, real visibility. But they want me out of Seattle, and I started thinking, what if this is my shot? To live loud, not whisper. Nate's chest tightened. So I'm the whisper? The thing you hide to climb? No! Eli's voice cracked, stepping closer. You're everything. That's the problem. I love you too much to watch us fade into footnotes. He reached out, but Nate flinched back, the air between them electric with unsaid accusations. Then fight for us? Nate pleaded, voice raw. Don't run. Eli's eyes glistened, but he shook his head. I don't know how anymore. The silence stretched, heavy as the rain outside, until Eli murmured, maybe we both need to learn. Nate left at dawn, the city awakening to another gray morning. Back in his apartment, he stared at the blueprint on his wall. The one Eli had framed as a joke, labeled our fortress against the flood. The tears came then, hot and unbidden, soaking the collar of his shirt. Victory had saved his fortune, but it was unraveling the only home he'd known. Fall crept into Seattle like an uninvited guest, turning the evergreens a deeper shade of bruised and blanketing the streets with leaves that crunched underfoot like brittle bones. Nate's routine hardened into something mechanical. Dawn runs along the Burke-Gilman Trail, where the fog-off Lake Washington muffled his labored breaths. Endless meetings at Greenwave, where his team's enthusiasm clashed against his growing detachment. Evenings alone with a tumbler of bourbon, scrolling through old photos until the glow of his phone blurred with exhaustion. The wound from Eli's departure suppurated, infecting everything. Meals tasted like ash, laughter from colleagues rang hollow. He told himself it was temporary, a recalibration, but the mirror betrayed him. Dark circles under his eyes, a gauntness to his cheeks that made him look like a specter haunting his own life. Greenwave, at least, was a phoenix. Post-trial, orders flooded in from Miami's flood-prone suburbs to New Orleans' resilient levees. Nate's barriers weren't just tech. They were hope, modular sentinels that unfurled like metallic lotus flowers at the first hint of surge. He flew to demos in Boston, where autumn leaves framed his pitch to city planners, and back home to oversee installs along the Duwamish, watching his creations hum to life amid the industrial sprawl. The press dubbed him a hero, but Nate felt like a fraud, peddling salvation while his own foundations cracked. Eli's absence echoed loudest in the quiet moments. A half-finished script on Nate's coffee table, Eli's side project, a rom-com about two guys navigating corporate espionage and stolen kisses, gathered dust. Nate couldn't bring himself to toss it. Instead, he read passages aloud on insomniac nights, Eli's voice ghosting the lines in his mind. Pride flags still fluttered from the apartment balcony, a defiant splash of rainbow against the slate sky. But they mocked him now, symbols of a joy deferred. Then came the call from his mother. It was a Tuesday mid-afternoon, Nate elbow-deep in server diagnostics when his phone trilled an unfamiliar number from back east, upstate New York, where his parents had retired to a clapboard house on Seneca Lake. He almost let it go to voicemail, but something in the area code tugged, a relic of Thanksgiving's past. Nathaniel! Her voice was thin, laced with the faint wheeze of age and cigarettes she'd sworn off a decade ago. It's Mom. He froze, tool clattering to the floor. Mom. Hey. The word felt rusty and used. A pause, filled with the distant hum of a TV, likely some home shopping channel. Her guilty pleasure. Your father. He's not doing well. The mill got him in the end, lungs, doc says. Black lung from all those years. Hospice now. The room tilted. Nate sank into his chair, the warehouse's fluorescent buzz suddenly oppressive. When? How long? Months, maybe less. Another pause, heavier. He wants to see you. Before. You know. Nate's throat closed. See him? After 15 years of radio silence. The occasional check like alms to a beggar? The old scar tore open, raw and bleeding. Why now? Oh, honey. Her sigh carried the weight of unspoken regrets. He's stubborn, you know that. But he's sorry. In his way. Come home, Nate. For me. He booked the flight that night. Red-eye to Rochester. The cabin pressure doing nothing to ease the knot in his chest. Eli would have gone with him, hand in his, cracking jokes about Midwestern passive aggression to lighten the load. Alone, Nate stared out at the starless void, wondering if closure was just another word for goodbye. The house on Seneca Lake hadn't changed. Sagging porch strung with holiday lights year-round. The dock jutting into water that lapped like hesitant whispers. Mom met him at the door, frielier than he remembered. Her hug brief and bony. Dad lay in the living room, converted to a sick room with a hospital bed and beeping monitors. His once broad frame shrunken under quilts. Oxygen tubes snaked from his nose, his eyes, faded blue, like Nate's own, fluttering open at the creak of floorboards. Nathaniel. The word was a rasp, effortful. Dad. Nate stood rigid, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. The scent of pine sol and impending loss thick in the air. They talked in fits and starts. About the weather, mild fall, unseasonably warm. Nate's work, vague nods to that engineer stuff. The neighbor's new boat, upright, Dad approved. Mom hovered, fetching water, her eyes darting between them like a referee. It was polite, surface level, the chasm unbridged. But as dusk fell, painting the lake in bruised purples, Dad's hand twitched toward the bedside table. Got something for you. His voice wheezed. Mom retrieved a small wooden box, Nate's old one, carved with wonky initials from a Boy Scout project. Inside, faded photos, Nate's first circuit board, a dog-eared letter from his high school science fair win, and at the bottom a check, crinkled, dated years ago, for 10 grand, never cashed. Scholarship money, Dad murmured. For that fancy college you skipped. Kept it waitin'. Nate's fingers trembled as he lifted it. Why didn't you? Thought you'd come crawlin' back. Prove me wrong about everything. Dad's gaze held, watery but steady. You didn't. Made something of yourself. Proud, son. Even if I was too damn pig-headed to say it sooner. The dam broke then. Not Nate's tears, but the words. You shut me out, Dad. Like I was a mistake you could erase. A cough racked Dad's frame, Mom dabbing his brow. When it subsided, he gripped Nate's wrist, grip surprisingly firm. Was scared of losing you to a world that chews up boys like you. Didn't know how to fix it. His eyes searched Nate's face, landing on the subtle tan line where a ring might sit. You got someone? Making you happy? Nate hesitated. The truth a flood he wasn't ready to unleash. Yeah. Or, I did. The confession slipped out, raw. Dad nodded, slow. Hold on, then. Life's too short for half measures. He released Nate's hand, sinking back, exhausted. Stay a bit. Fish at dawn. Nate did. They sat on the dock as the sun crested the hills, lines cast into water gone glassy with first frost. Words were sparse, stories of mill pranks, Nate's wildest demo fails. But the silence felt different, companionable, a mending thread. When Nate flew back 3 days later, the check deposited and the box tucked in his carry-on. Something had shifted. Not healed, not fully, but scarred over, less prone to bleed. Seattle greeted him with a deluge, wipers on full as he navigated I-5. His phone pinged. A text from an unknown number. Saw your interview. Kill it as always. Coffee? Nate's pulse spiked. Eli. Reaching out after radio silence. He typed back before doubt could intervene. Pike Place, tomorrow. 10 a.m. The market was alive with the symphony of haggling and fish-tossing. The air tangy with salt and fresh blooms. Eli waited by the original Starbucks, 2 lattes in hand, his smile tentative, like testing thin ice. He looked good. Tanned from a weekend hike, perhaps, the lines around his eyes softened. Hey! Eli said, handing over the cup. Steam curled between them, a fragile bridge. Hey! Nate sipped, the foam bitter on his tongue. What's this? Eli shrugged, eyes on the bay. Missed you. The quiet got too loud. And I turned down Apex. Stayed for the city. For us, if there's still an us. Nate's heart stuttered. You walked away. Said we were half a life. I was scared. Eli met his gaze, amber depths turbulent. Of losing you to the grind, of us becoming another statistic. But being without you, that's the real half-life. He stepped closer, voice dropping. I want to try again. No more hiding. We go public. Announce it at the next board meeting, pride flags and all. The offer hung, tempting as forbidden fruit. Nate thought of his dad's frail hand, the check's quiet apology, the dock's dawn light. Okay, he breathed, but slow. Build it right this time. They walked the waterfront, shoulders brushing, the rain holding off like a benediction. That night, in Nate's apartment, they didn't rush to bedsheets. Instead, they cooked pasta, elbows knocking in the tiny kitchen, laughter bubbling up like forgotten springs. Eli read from his script, Nate editing lines with a red pen, the hours slipping into easy intimacy. Felt like reclaiming ground, tentative but true. But shadows lingered. A week later, at a Greenwave happy hour in a Fremont brewpub, Nate caught whispers, board members eyeing him over craft Alesh, murmurs about personal distractions post-trial glow. Eli, ever the PR shield, deflected with charm. But Nate felt the undercurrent, a tide pulling at his resolve. Then the email arrived, from his mom, attaching a scanned letter in Dad's shaky script. Son, heard about your win. Knew you had it in you. Love always was. Nate read it twice, tears blurring the ink, before forwarding it to Eli. This is us, he typed. Mending, messy but real. Eli's reply, damn right. Let's make it official. Winter clamped down on Seattle with uncharacteristic ferocity that year, snow dusting the Space Needle like powdered sugar on a forgotten donut, turning commutes into slushy gauntlets. Greenwave's warehouse became a bunker, heaters humming against the chill as Nate's team pushed toward a flagship install. A network of barriers along the Lake Washington Ship Canal, set to debut at the Spring Boat Show. It was high stakes, mayoral endorsement, national coverage, but Nate thrived in the pressure, his focus laser sharp, Eli's return a steadying force. They rebuilt deliberately, no grand gestures, just the accumulation of small truths. Mornings started with shared jogs through Discovery Park, breaths fogging in the crisp air, Eli's hand slipping into Nate's when no one's watching turned to always. Evenings were for Eli's script readings, Nate's feedback honing the dialogue until it sang with authenticity, the rom-com now laced with bioluminescent threads of their own story. You're my beta reader, Eli teased one night, sprawled on the couch with takeout tie, fixing my plot holes. Nate smirked, chopsticks poised. Someone has to. That third act betrayal? Too on the nose. Eli's laugh faded into something softer. Speaking of, I booked us a weekend in the San Juans. Just us. No signals, no suits. The cabin on Orcas Island was a revelation. Cedar walls scented with salt and pine, a wood stove crackling against the February frost, waves lapping the rocky shore like a lullaby. They hiked to the top of Mount Constitution, the Salish Sea sprawling below in jeweled blues, and at the summit, Eli dropped to one knee. Not with a ring, but a simple silver band etched with circuit patterns, scavenged from a custom jeweler in Pioneer Square. Marry me, Eli said, voice steady despite the wind whipping his hair. Not for show. For us, a promise in the quiet, before we shout it to the world. Nate's breath caught, the vista blurring. The old wound twinged, family holidays he'd never have, a father's nod that came too late. But here, with Eli's amber eyes earnest and exposed, it felt surmountable. Yes, he whispered, pulling Eli up into a kiss that tasted of salt and forever. They exchanged bands that night by firelight, vows murmured like code. To weather the floods, to debug the doubts, to build something enduring. It was hidden, that vow, no officiant, no papers filed, just witnesses in the stars and the sea. But it mended something in Nate, a solder joint fusing frayed wires. Back in Seattle, they wore the rings under shirt sleeves, a secret talisman. Eli dove into wedding plans anyway. Hypothetical, playful. Beachside in Cali, or a courthouse dash with drag queens as attendants. When we're ready, he'd say, we make it legal, spectacular. The idol cracked in March with the Canals project hitting turbulence. A test deployment glitched, barriers deploying prematurely during a freak nor'easter, flooding a warehouse district and stranding commuters. No injuries, but the headlines screamed Green Wave's flood fiasco, and the mayor's office issued a hold on the full rollout. Nate scrambled, poring over logs in the warehouse till midnight, Eli fielding furious calls from stakeholders. It's a calibration error, Nate assured his team at the emergency huddle. Whiteboard's a frenzy of diagnostics. We fix it, we roll stronger. But doubt crept in, insidious as damp rot. Board meetings turned tense, gray-haired execs like Harlan Thorpe, Nate's silent investor from the early days, leaning forward with steepled fingers. This is a PR nightmare. Nathaniel, Harlan drawled, his Texas twang cutting through the conference room's hum. And whispers say your personal life's the real leak. Nate's jaw tightened, Eli's hand brushing his knee under the table. A covert reassurance. With all due respect, Harlan, my life's not on trial here. The tech is. Harlan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Everything's on trial when millions are at stake. He glanced at Eli, then away. Keep it clean. That night, over beers at the alibi room, Eli vented. He's fishing. Thinks we're a liability, the gay founder's angle. Like it's 1995. Nate clinked bottles, forcing levity. Let him fish. We've got bigger nets. But the betrayal brewed unseen. Eli's phone buzzed more than usual. Late calls he took in the hallway. Scripts suddenly needing revisions that kept him out till dawn. Nate chalked it to stress, the project's shadow lengthening. Then, a tip from a junior dev. Saw Eli at Apex's holiday mixer last month. Cozy with their CMO. Nate confronted him gently, over breakfast burritos on the balcony. What's going on with Apex? Old flames or new opportunities? Eli paused, fork midway. Networking, that's all. They're still sniffing around, but I shut it down. The devs saw you laughing it up with their execs. A flicker, guilt, irritation. It was a mixer, Nate. Schmoozing. You want me to ghost the industry? No, but transparency. We're in this together. Eli's sigh was a gust. I am. Trust me. He leaned across the table, kissing Nate's knuckles. Always. Nate wanted to, God, he did. But the seed of doubt took root, watered by Harlan's barbs and the project's mounting pressure. The fix came through. A software patch that synced better with weather APIs, barriers now purring like well-oiled guardians. The mayor reinstated approval. The boat show demo a triumph. Crowds oohing as Nate's tech danced with the tides. Eli's PR magic spun gold from straw, features in Forbes hailing Green Wave's resilience. In the afterglow, at a rooftop gala overlooking the sound, Nate pulled Eli aside amid clinking glasses and jazz riffs. We're unstoppable, he murmured, nuzzling Eli's ear. Marry me for real, this summer. Eli's grin lit the night. Thought you'd never ask. But as they swayed to the music, Nate's phone vibrated. A voicemail from Mom. Nate, honey, your dad's gone. Peaceful. Come when you can. The world tilted, joy curdling to grief. Eli held him through the sobs, whispering, I've got you. They flew east together, the first time Eli met the family. Mom's wary embrace at the airport, the empty chair at the kitchen table. At the lakeside service, under a sky heavy with promise of rain, Nate scattered ashes with hands that shook, Eli's arm a steady anchor. Mom pulled them aside after, her eyes sharp. He's a good one, she said of Eli, squeezing Nate's hand. Don't let go. Back in Seattle, the funeral's echo lingered, but so did resolve. Nate dove into wedding logistics. A small affair at a Bainbridge vineyard, wildflowers and waterfront views. Invites to the team and a few bold investors. Eli handled the vendors, his energy infectious. No hiding. he declared, pinning boutonnieres to mood boards. We're the poster boys for love in the time of floods. Yet the whispers persisted. A leaked email surfaced on an industry forum. Harlan to Apex's board, CCING Eli. Voss is our in, play the personal angle, flip him. Hayes crumbles without his cheerleader. Nate confronted Eli in the apartment, printout trembling in his fist. Is this why you've been distant? Playing both sides. Eli's face drained of color. Nate, no, I forwarded nothing. Harlan's desperate, reaching. But you're in the chain. How? I met him for coffee, to warn him off. He must have twisted it. The lie hung, thin as fog. Nate's voice broke. Tell me the truth. For once. Eli deflated, sinking to the couch. Okay. They offered double relocation, the works. I listened. For us, Nate, to build something bigger without the hiding. But I said no. Half-truths. Nate whispered, backing away. Like before. It's not. Eli reached, but Nate shrugged him off, the ring heavy on his finger. I need air. He stormed into the night, rain slicking his face indistinguishable from tears. The wound, old and new, gaped, betrayal's blade twisting deep. Spring erupted in Seattle with defiant color. Cherry blossoms rioting along University Avenue. Daffodils nodding in Volunteer Park like conspirators plotting joy. But Nate navigated it numb, the wedding a specter he couldn't face. He crashed on a coworker's couch in Ballard, the lumpy futon a penance for his fractured trust. Work became salvation. Final tweaks to the canal barriers, now humming flawlessly, earning Greenwave a city contract worth millions. His team rallied, potlucks and pep talks papering over his hollow cheeks, but Eli's texts, please talk to me, when unread, deleted like spam. The truth unraveled in fragments. A late-night scroll through Eli's abandoned laptop, left at the apartment in the haste of Nate's exit, revealed the emails. Not just Harlan's feelers, but Eli's replies, cautious probes about terms, hypotheticals for a joint venture that would have gutted Greenwave's IP. No outright treason, but the flirtation stung, a velvet glove over the knife. Nate forwarded it all to Harlan anonymously, a quiet detonation. By morning, Apex's overtures ceased, the board issuing a terse memo on ethical boundaries. Eli showed up at the warehouse 3 days later, rain-soaked and desperate, blocking Nate's path to the server room. I messed up, he said, voice cracking over the hum of fans. Curiosity, ego, whatever, but I chose you. Always. Nate's arms crossed, barrier unyielding. Chose me after shopping me out. How do I unknow that? Eli's eyes brimmed. You don't. But we fight through it. Like the floods. We predict. We divert. He stepped closer, scent of wet wool and regret. Cancel the wedding if you want. But don't cancel us. Nate wavered, the pull magnetic. I need time. Real time. Eli nodded, retreating. Take it. I'll wait. The limbo stretched into weeks, Nate haunting coffee shops and trails, journaling doubts in a battered notebook. Pros, Eli's laugh, the way he remembered Nate's coffee order. Cons, the emails, the echo of his dad's silence. Mom called, her voice steadier post-grief. Love's not clean, Nate. It's the mess that makes it real. Your father. He wrote that letter 100 times before sending one. Her words echoed during a solo hike in the Olympics, ferns unfurling like green flames underfoot. At a waterfall's roar, Nate slipped the ring from his finger. Not discarding, but pocketing. A pause, not a period. He texted Eli, dinner. Neutral ground. The Pike Place gum wall was their spot. Cheek-by-jowl wads of neon a testament to persistence. They met at a nearby bistro, awkward as first dates, menus as shields. Eli looked wrecked, stubble shadowing his jaw, amber eyes dulled. But his smile flickered when Nate arrived. No scripts tonight, Nate said, sliding into the booth. Just truth. Eli exhaled. Truth. I panicked. The wedding going public, it terrified me. What if it tanks everything? So I hedged, like a coward. But losing you? That's the real tank. Nate traced the table's grain. I get fear. Mine's a ghost family fallout. But we vowed no more halves. No more. Eli's hand extended, palm up. Nate hesitated, then clasped it, the contact a spark. Reconciliation was tentative. Therapy sessions via Zoom with a queer counselor in Portland, dissecting betrayals like faulty code. They postponed the wedding to fall, focusing on foundations, date nights at the symphony, Eli finishing his script with Nate's input, Greenwave's canal launch a unqualified success. The barriers gleamed under summer sun, parting waters like Moses, earning Nate a TED Talk slot in Vancouver, BC. Eli beamed from the front row. No hiding, his pride a beacon. But conflict simmered external now. Harlan, cornered by the leak, lashed out at a board retreat in Bellevue, summoning Nate to a lakeside chalet, bourbon decanter sweating on the oak table. This personal drama, Harlan growled, ice clinking. It's bleeding into business. Investors jittery about instability. Nate leaned forward, unflinching. If by instability you mean my engagement to the man who tripled our media reach, then yeah, deal with it. Harlan's laugh was tobacco rough. Engagement? To Voss? Boy, that's a powder keg. Apex is laughing. Offering buyouts again. Whispering about your distractions. Step down as CEO, let a steady hand take the wheel. For the company's sake. The offer slithered, tempting in its poison. Nate thought of the fortune saved. The team counting on him. Eli's ring glinting in his mind's eye. No. And if you push, the board hears about your Apex chats. Harlan's face purpled, but Nate walked out. The lake's calm a mirror to his resolve. He drove straight to Eli's, bursting through the door with a fierceness that startled them both. Marry me tomorrow, he panted, dropping to knees on the hardwood. Courthouse, now, before they tear us down. Eli's shock melted to joy, pulling Nate up. Yes. Hell yes. The ceremony was bare bones. King County clerk in a fluorescent hall, vows exchanged over recycled vows. Witnesses a bemused couple from Ohio. They emerged into midday sun. Rings legal now, certificates clutched like talismans. No fanfare, but the hidden wedding sealed them. A private mending, the old wound cauterized in ink and intent. Word spread organically. A team toast at the warehouse. Mom's delighted call from the lake house. Send photos? Loves? Even Harlan's grudging email. Congrats. Let's talk strategy. Greenwave stabilized. Barriers exporting to coastal cities. Nate's fortune secure but secondary to this quieter wealth. Yet climax loomed. Eli's script sold to a streaming giant, greenlit for pilot. It's us, he told Nate over rooftop wine. City lights winking below. Coded into every line. Nate clinked glasses. Our story, finally voiced. But success bred envy. Apex, rebuffed, went nuclear. A whistleblower claim alleging Greenwave bribed inspectors for the canal install. Fabricated. But the probe launched. FBI knocking at dawn. Nate's office ransacked. Headlines bang. Tech darling drowns in scandal. Eli stood firm, lawyered up, but privately, fear gnawed. This is Harlan, he whispered in bed. Nate's arms his harbor. He'll burn it all to spite us. Nate kissed his temple. Then we rise from the ashes. The investigation dragged into summer. Depositions in stuffy rooms where Nate defended his integrity line by line. Eli testified too, his poise cracking only once. Admitting the old emails under oath. A mea culpa that cleared the air but exposed their scars. The team fractured. 2 devs jumped ship. Investors wavered. Nate's mom flew out, bunking in the apartment, her presence a talisman. Baking pies, quizzing Eli on his intentions with maternal acuity. You hurt him once, she said sternly over coffee. Don't again. Eli swallowed. Never. He's my north. The probe's end came swift. Apex exposed as the forger. Harlan indicted for fraud. Vindication washed over Greenwave like a cleansing tide. Contracts renewed. Stock hypothetical soaring. But the toll lingered. Nate gaunt from stress. Eli's script delayed by depositions. In the quiet aftermath, they planned the public wedding. September, at that Bainbridge vineyard, guests from coast to coast. Invites went out rainbow-edged, a declaration. Nate's dad may have been gone, but his letter framed the mantle, a bridge to the past. Yet betrayal's echo whispered. Was Harlan alone? A final email, anonymous, pinged Eli's inbox days before the vows. Voss. Still time to jump. Hayes sinks ships. Attached. Doctored photos. Nate in compromising poses from a long-ago conference. Twisted to suggest infidelity. Eli deleted it, but doubt slithered in. He showed Nate at dawn. The vineyard's fields mist-shrouded. Poison, Nate said, crushing the printout. We burn it together. August burned hot and hazy. Seattle's rare heat wave turning the sound to a shimmering mirage. Air conditioners groaning in unison across the city. Greenwave's warehouse sweltered, but Nate's team buzzed with post-scandal energy. New hires, barrier prototypes for Hurricane Alleys, a sense of Phoenix reborn. Personally, wedding fever gripped. Fittings for slim tuxes in soft grays. Eli's sister flying in from San Diego with tales of beachside rehearsals. Nate's mom orchestrating floral charts like a general. The vineyard on Bainbridge promised perfection. Rolling hills of Cabernet grapes heavy with promise. A pergola draped in wisteria for the aisle. Fairy views framing the sound like a living canvas. Nate threw himself into it, the planning a distraction from the probe's phantom aches. Sleepless nights replaying Harlan's sneer, the anonymous email's venom. Eli, too, carried shadows. His script's pilot stalled in rewrites, execs murmuring about edgy but safe. They want our story without the grit, he griped during a tasting at the vineyard. Swirling Pinot Noir. Betrayal arc? Too real. Nate squeezed his hand under the table, rings clinking softly. Make 'em feel it. That's your gift. Eli's smile warmed, but his eyes held a storm. And yours is building through it. The bachelor weekend was low-key. A guy's trip to the Hoh rainforest, Nate's dev team in tow. Campfires crackling under ancient cedars, IPAs flowing, stories swapped till stars pierced the canopy. Eli's crew, screenwriter pals from LA joined, ribbing him about cold feet. Nah, Eli grinned, arms slung over Nate's shoulder by the fire. This one's bolted down. But solitude brought confessions. Alone by the river's murmur, Nate unburdened to his lead coder, Jax, a burly trans guy with a beard like a wizard's and a knack for neural nets. Ever feel like success is a trap? Saves the fortune, but costs the soul. Jax poked the embers. Every day. But you and Eli? That's the soul part. Don't let the suits steal it. Across the strait, Eli's night unraveled differently. His sister threw a joint anti-wedding bash in a queen and speakeasy. Cocktails and karaoke. Guests spilling into the alley for smokes. Midway through a tipsy rendition of Single Ladies. Eli's phone lit. Harlan, out on bail, voice slurred from a burner. You think you're safe, Voss? That email was just the appetizer. I got more real dirt on Hayes. From before. The kind that outs your little secret wedding. Paints him as the fraud who faked his coming out for pity funding. Eli's blood iced. You're done, Harlan. Rot in hell. A chuckle, oily. Ask your boy about Seattle General '08. The hookup that went south. Photos exist. Leak M. And your fairy tale drowns. The call dropped, Eli's hands shaking as he deleted the log. Seattle General, Nate's one-night regret freshman year, a fumbling encounter with a bar hookup that ended in ER stitches when things turned rough. No assault, but a wake-up to boundaries. Nate had buried it deep, therapy-scarred, never shared even with Eli. How Harlan knew. A ghost from the past, perhaps, twisted into ammunition. Eli didn't sleep, the speakeasy's jazz haunting his cab ride home. Dawn found him pacing the apartment, Nate still away. When his phone pinged, Nate's text. Miss you. Home soon, guilt surged. He drafted a confession, deleted it. Instead, can't wait. Love you. The wedding week descended like a whirlwind. Rehearsal dinner at a waterfront bistro. Mom toasting with watery eyes. To loves that weather every storm. Eli's family grilling Nate on engineering puns. So, you're the damn guy. Laughter flowed, but Eli's smile strained. Harlan's threat a noose tightening. Rehearsal day, ferry chugging toward Bainbridge. Nate sensed it. Eli's quiet, the fidget of his fingers. Talk to me? Nate urged, wind tousling their hair on deck. Eli hesitated, waves chopping below. Harlan called, bluffing about dirt. Old stuff. Nate's gut twisted. What kind? Doesn't matter. I'll handle. It does. Nate gripped the rail. No more solos. Eli exhaled, spilling it, the hospital, the threat. Nate's face paled, but not shock recognition. He dug that up? God. He leaned into Eli, voice muffled. It was a mistake. Rough consent edge learned hard. Buried it for a reason. Eli's arm tightened. And I should have told you right away. But I didn't want to taint this. Nate pulled back, eyes searching. Taint? Sus Eli. The mess included. A beat then, leak it if he does. Truth's our barrier. The resolve bonded them, but tension simmered. That night, post-rehearsal barbecue, Eli slipped away to the vineyard's edge, dialing a PI contact from his screenwriter days. Trace Harlan's burner, and any dirt trails. The PI's callback came at midnight. Harlan's bluffing hard photos are grainy fakes, cobbled from stock, but he's desperate. Bail hearing tomorrow. Tip the feds anonymously. Do it, Eli said, hanging up as Nate stirred beside him in the guest cottage bed. Climax crashed the morning of. As guests milled the vineyard. Mom adjusting boutonnieres, Jack snapping candids. Sirens wailed distant, then near. News vans crested the hill. Reporters spilling out like ants. Mics thrust forward. Nathaniel Hayes. Comment on Harlan Thorpe's arrest. Nate froze mid-aisle, tux crisp, Eli at his side. Arrest. The scrum surged. Feds raided his home. Embezzlement, witness tampering. Your name's all over it. Eli's PI work, accelerated by the tip. Harlan's empire crumbling. The threats exposed in warrants. But in the chaos, a reporter lobbed the grenade. And the '08 scandal? Sources say it's resurfacing. Nate's blood roared. Eli stepped forward, voice steel. Off the record? It's ancient history, twisted by a cornered man. On record, we're getting married today. Focus on that. The herd paused, then pivoted. Cameras whirring as Nate and Eli clasped hands. Rings glinting in the sun. Mom herded guests inside the pavilion. Jack's blocking the door with bearish charm. Under the pergola, vows exchanged amid hushed awe. The sounds breeze carrying their promises. Through floods and fakes, I choose you. In code and chaos, forever mine. The kiss sealed it, cheers erupting as news choppers thwopped overhead. Scandal transmuted to spectacle. Their love the defiant headline. But betrayal's aftershock hit post-ceremony, during the reception's toasts. Eli's phone buzzed. Harlan's lawyer, pleading plea bargain dirt. In the vineyard's quiet corner, Eli confessed the full PI play to Nate. I went rogue, to protect us. Nate's joy fractured. Without me, after we vowed no solos. It was instinct. Trust's a joint algorithm, Eli. You debugged alone. Hurt flared. Raw. What if it backfires? Drags us deeper. Eli's face crumpled. I thought. Saving the day. You thought for me. Nate paced, grapes crunching underfoot. Like I'm fragile. The engineer who saved millions, reduced to porcelain. Guests laughed distant. Oblivious. Eli reached. Forgive me. Again. Nate stopped. The old wound. Dad's silence. Eli's emails. Mirroring this fresh cut. Not here. Not now. He walked away, the celebration a blur. Twilight draped the vineyard in lavender hush. String lights twinkling like fireflies as the reception wound down. Guests swaying to a cover band's acoustic set. Cake crumbs scattered like confetti regrets. Nate nursed a ginger ale on the pergola's edge. The sound's dark expanse a mirror to his turmoil. The wedding had been magic, vows heartfelt, dances joyful, Mom's tearful hug whispering, your father's smiling somewhere. But Eli's solo gambit soured the aftertaste. A betrayal not of malice but misplaced chivalry. How many times could they solder the fractures before the circuit failed? Eli found him there, bow tie loosened, amber eyes shadowed. "We should talk." Nate nodded, leading him to a bench amid the vines, the air thick with fermented earth. "You can't keep playing night, Eli. I'm not the damsel. We're equals in this flood." Eli sank beside him, elbows on knees. "I know. It was stupid panic mode like the emails. Seeing Harlan's threat, I flashed to losing you, the wedding imploding. So I acted. For us. But without me." Nate's voice softened, exhaustion edging the anger. "Trust is the code we run on. Bypass it and the system's glitchy." Eli nodded, tears tracing his cheeks. "You're right. I'm sorry. Deeply." He slipped the ring off, offering it palm up. "If this breaks us, say it now. I'll go." The gesture pierced, Nate's own ring suddenly heavy. He thought of the hidden ceremony, the firelit vows, the sea's witness, a foundation unshaken by tempests. Of his dad's letter, messy amends in ink. Mom's quiet strength, the team's loyalty through scandals. Love wasn't flawless. It was resilient, a barrier adapting to surges. "No." Nate took the ring, sliding it back on Eli's finger, their hands entwining. "We debug together. Promise, no more rogue runs. Promise." Eli's relief was a sob, pulling Nate into an embrace that smelled of cologne and crushed grapes. They sat like that till stars pricked the sky, words weaving repair. Boundaries for Eli's instincts, check-ins for Nate's scars. Therapy rebooted in fall. The ferry back to Seattle was a cocoon. Guests departed, just them on the upper deck, city lights smearing like watercolor. "Humanistic ending?" Eli murmured, head on Nate's shoulder. "Ours or the script's?" Nate chuckled softly. "Both. Messy. Mended. Moving forward." Months blurred into autumn's gold. Greenwave's barriers went global. Installs in Jakarta's monsoons, Nate keynoting at climate summits, his story, not just tech, but triumph over tides personal and professional. Inspiring panels on queer innovation. Eli's pilot aired to buzz. Critics praising the raw heart. A second season greenlit. They bought a house in Wallingford. Craftsman with a workshop for Nate's tinkering, and a nook for Eli's writing desk. Rainbow flag fluttering from the porch unapologetically. The old wound? It never vanished. Nate's mom visited often, sharing lake house stories, but holidays evoked Dad's absence, a quiet ache. Yet Eli's presence soothed, their hidden wedding a touchstone, the public one a bold chapter. Harlan's trial ended in conviction, a footnote in trade rags, his threats dissolved like mist. One crisp November eve, as rain pattered the workshop windows, Nate unveiled a prototype. A personal barrier, wrist-worn sensor syncing to Eli's phone, vibrating warnings for stress spikes, a digital hand in the dark. "For us," he said, buckling it on Eli. "Predict the storms." Eli's eyes misted, pulling him close. "You already do." They made love slow that night. Not urgent fire, but embers banked deep, bodies mapping familiar shores. Afterward, tangled in sheets, Eli traced Nate's ring. Fortune saved, wounds mended. What's next? Nate smiled into the dark. More code, more scenes, more us. In the years that followed, Greenwave became synonymous with resilience, barriers saving lives in Houston's Harvey resurgence. Nate's TED Talk a viral clarion for inclusive tech. Eli's show ran 5 seasons, earning Emmys, its finale echoing their arc. Lovers weathering corporate gales, emerging whole. They mentored startups, queer youth coding camps in Fremont parks, turning scars to scaffolds. Nate's mom passed gently in their 10th year, Lake House willed to them. A retreat for anniversaries, fishing lines cast at dawn. Eli scattered her ashes with Nate, whispering, "She mended us too." No grand biopic, no flawless arc, just a life American in its grit. Dramatic downpours, emotional eddies, romantic refrains, humanistic heart. The engineer saved a fortune, yes, but the hidden wedding? It saved him, ring by ring, vow by vow, a quiet revolution against the floods within. And in Seattle's eternal rain, They walked hand in hand, unbroken.